Okay, on this video for PSAT, SAT prep, we're going to discuss linear equations, and more specifically, the components of linear equations and what they mean in the context of a real-world situation. Okay, if we take a look at this question, we'll read it here in just a second, but let me just say up front that I understand in this era of Spotify and Apple Music, this context is a little bit outdated. But I think this is a good question to illustrate the different components of a linear equation. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. It says an online music service lets customers download an unlimited number of songs for 25 cents each after paying a monthly membership fee of $5. The total amount of money that a customer spends on music in a single month is found using the equation y equals 0.25x plus 5. And the question is going to ask us what the variable x represents in this function. So if we just break this down one piece at a time, taking a look at this equation right here, let's start with y. What does y represent in this equation? Well, y is the function itself. And so what does this function represent? The question actually tells us that. It tells us that y represents the total amount of money that a customer spends on music in dollars in a single month. And so that automatically tells me what y is representing in this equation. If we go to the next component of this equation, that would be the 0.25. Well, we know in our study of linear equations, y equals mx plus b, that the number in front of x is called the slope of the line. And so that 0.25 represents the slope of the graph of the line. But what does it represent in the context of this online music service? Well, I think the best way to see that is possibly through a table of values. And so over here on the left, I've got a table set up with x's and y's. And so I'm just going to start with x is equal to 0 and plug that into my equation to get the y value. So 0.25 times 0, which of course would be 0, plus 5 would equal to 5. And 5, you'll remember, is that initial fee, or sometimes I call it the flat fee, for joining the online music service. So before you ever even download one song, you're going to be paying this online music service $5 before you even purchase any songs. So when you purchase 0 songs, you're going to be paying $5. And some of you with that sentence will be able to determine the answer to this question, but I'm going to keep going and explain all of the different aspects of this equation. So if we keep going with this table of values, if I let x be 1, then that's going to give me a y value of $5.25. If I let x be 2, that will give me a y value of $5.50. X value of 3 gives me a y value of $5.75, and on and on and on. And so what I start to see is that this slope, or the 0.25, represents the amount of money that I'm paying for each song. So this is the money paid for, whoops, sorry for the bad spelling there, paid for each song. And so if you look at the answer choices, that is actually letter J in this particular case. And so we know that that's not the answer to our question because we're being asked to figure out what the variable x represents in this function. So before we come to x, let's talk about 5 for just a second and what that represents. We know that in a linear equation, that 5, that constant term at the end, represents our b, which is our y-intercept. And earlier, I used the terminology initial fee or flat fee to join the online music service. And so that's what this y-intercept, or this 5, represents in this particular context. This is the initial fee that it's going to cost to join the music service. And so you can think of that context for really any situation. No matter what the real-world context is, the y-intercept is always the initial amount or the initial value or the initial fee or whatever word fits the context that you are looking for. And so that finally brings us to x, which of course would represent the variable in our linear equation. And so as you can sort of deduce from the table, that x represents the number of songs that the customer downloads each month. So this is the number of songs that I download. And so to answer this question fully, that means that the answer here would be letter G. Hopefully this video helps you understand the different components of a linear equation, and now you can go back and answer the question on your Google form.